All right, so there are a couple different options for setting up environments in which to use Python for data science. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is the Anaconda the environment, which allows you to build a nice, clean system in which to do your data science. Okay, so in order to install Anaconda, you want to go to this site. So I just Googled Anaconda. It's this world's most popular data science platform. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And what we're looking at here specifically is just for an individual like computer. So we'll just do individual edition and then click on download. And down here are the different builds. So there's builds for Mac, Linux, Windows, 32-bit, 64-bit. So what I'm going to use is the 64-bit graphical installer because I'm using a 64-bit version of Windows. So it might look a little bit different if you're installing it to a different operating system. Okay, so I already downloaded this file. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here's the executable. Open it there. And we'll click next, agree. You can install it just for yourself or for all users. If you're admin, I'm just going to do just me. And then an installation folder, I'm just going to put a letter only in here because I've already installed it, so I don't want to overwrite anything. And one of the key things, if you use a lot of different packages and you're using this for data science, you definitely want to click this Add Anaconda to Path Environment Variable. So make sure you have that clicked on, and also the rest of your Anaconda as your default. And then if you click Install, it'll run through your installation process. So again, I've already done that, so I'm not going to run that. So yes, I want to quit. All right, so that's that. So let's show you what Anaconda looks like. So go down here to my list of programs, and then Anaconda 3 64-bit. There's a list of different tools and programs in here. If you've just installed it, you probably won't have all of these because some of these are installed after setting up environments. But you should at least have the Anaconda Navigator and the PowerShell and the prompt. So I'm going to start here by opening up Anaconda Navigator. This is just initializing. All right, there we go. All right, so whenever Anaconda installs, you're going to get this base environment. You generally don't want to work in there. Instead, you want to create a new environment that's specific for your task, like your data science or your analysis that you're going to do. Okay, so in here, I already have a few environments set up. So there's the base, and then I have a couple demo environments. I have this R reticulate, which I use to link R and Python, and this Maxwell PySci, which is my my data science environment for Python. So those are that's the list of all the environments. If you click on environments here, and then a specific environment, I'm just going to click on this one, then this will show you all of the packages or libraries or modules that you have installed into that environment. Yeah, so those are all the installed packages there for Maxwell PySci. Okay, and then there's also sets of programs that can be installed. So for this Maxwell PySci, I have Jupyter Notebook installed and Spider, and there's a couple other options. Note there's RStudio because you can run R and Python together in one of these environments, which I'm not doing in this case, so there's not really a point in installing it. The ones that seem to be used most often are going to be Jupyter Notebooks, Spider, and maybe the Jupyter Lab. So I'm just going to show you what Spider looks like. If we click on that, again, this is a IDE or integrated development environment for Python. So loads like this, you have an area where you can create scripts and execute and see things return to the console. This is kind of similar to like RStudio if you're an R user, so it's an IDE for Python. So that's a valuable tool. And what we're going to mainly work with in here is going to be Jupyter Notebooks. So let's launch one of those. So this is going to load in a web browser. So whatever your default web browser is, mine's Firefox. So I'm going to create a new notebook here. We'll do Python. And I'm going to do a save as, give it a name. We'll just call this demo notebook 2, save, and there we have a Jupyter notebook we can work in. So we'll just show you a couple odds and ends in here that you're going to see as you work through the course. So there are a couple different types of cells. We're going to work with 2 main types, and that's code cells or markdown. So a code cell allows you to type and use Python. So for example, we could import a library, and then if you click run, it'll execute that cell. You can do some coding, so I'm just gonna do something easy here. So create 2 variables, and then we could just print back the product of those 2 variables, and that prints it back. So those are code cells. The other type of cell we're going to work with is markdown cells. So to do that, we're going to go to change this over to markdown. And then we can use markdown to actually generate content. So for example, we do pound header, that'll create a first order header. If we do, again back to markdown, 2 pounds, that's a second order header. If we just type text, and that's just going to be some plain text, so some text, again, run that. We could do something like a list, so we do item 1, item 2, item 3. We could do like an unordered list, item 1, item 2, item 3. Just run that. Oop. Run. So, that didn't work the way I had expected. It was just stringing those along. I'll just put this in a separate cell here. And let's get rid of that. So set to markdown. Note you see the code highlighting. That's because it thinks that's a code cell. So we have some unordered list, an unordered list. You can also do things like bold text. Again, switch that to markdown. Italicized text. I think that's how you spell that. Bold italics, right? If you want to run all your cells, you can click on a cell and do cell, run all, or run all below, run all above, clear out all the output. So that's just some basics of working in Jupyter Notebooks. I'm going to do a file. Once I just saved it with the save button here, and then to stop, we'll do close and halt. And that closes it out. We can close out the notebook there. Okay, so let's look at actually setting up an environment from scratch, which you have Anaconda set up. So note you can do some of that in here. You can create an environment, clone an environment, import an environment. But instead, I'm going to show you how to do this from the command line, which is the most, I guess, fluid or way to do it. So you can do this in the PowerShell or in the prompt. I'm just going to open up the prompt. Okay, so when you open up the prompt here in Anaconda, you are going to be in your base environment. But we would like to actually create a new environment. So before we get started, I'm just going to show you a couple simple commands. So for example, if you want to see all the environments that are on your machine, you can do conda env list, and that'll list all the environments. Okay, so on this machine, I currently have the base environment, which is active, demo 1, demo 2, my Maxwell PySci 1, and my R reticulate, and that's where they exist on my machine. If you want to create a new environment, then to do that, you can do conda create, and then name, and then the environment name. So let's call this demo env3. And now it's we can just hit Y, and then that'll go through and install that environment. And note over here, you can see that this is updating now with a new environment in the list. It popped up there. Okay, note also you can specify like the version of Python to use. By default, it's going to use whatever the newest one that installed with Anaconda is, but if you need an older Python, you can specify that when you install the environment or create the environment. Okay, and then to actually work in that environment, we need to activate it. So to do that, you do conda activate, and then the environment name. So this was demo env3. And now it changed over here, so you can see that we're in the demo environment. All right, so let's talk about installing the modules or libraries into a package. So that's actually, again, pretty easy. You just do conda, install, and then the package name. So I'm going to start off by installing NumPy, because that's pretty much required if you're going to do data science. So click that, does a search. So it's going to install NumPy and a bunch of other dependencies. So yes, and it'll go through that installation process. Okay, so that should be installed. Now I'm going to do conda install, and I'm going to install pandas, which is another requirement for data science. Okay, so it's going to install pandas, and then again a couple other dependencies there. So hit Y. Note that instead of using conda, you can also use like pip to install. Sometimes that's required if it's not available through conda. Okay, that's installed. Now I'm going to install some of the graphic libraries. So we'll do conda install matplotlib. So that's going to install matplotlib. And yes. And it'll go through that installation. And again, it's installing dependencies and whatnot. Note that later on, if you're doing something specific and it won't run because you don't have a package, you can always go back in here and install more packages. So later on, like whenever we work with geospatial data, we're going to need things like GeoPandas and Rasterio. If we do like deep learning, you use like TensorFlow and Keras. So you can add to this after the fact, or you can create an environment with a new environment with different sets in it if you want. Or different sets of different library set. And then, okay, so if that's installed, so let's do conda install Seaborn, another graphing library. Okay, that's done. And then lastly, I'm going to install scikit-learn. Okay. And that's for doing things like machine learning with Python. Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty much the bulk of what we would need to start doing data science in one of these libraries. What I'm going to do now is a conda list, and that's going to list all the packages that are currently installed in the active environment. There we go. So there's our list of installed packages. So you can see matplotlib there, NumPy, scikit-learn, where's pandas, and then again, like all of their dependencies. Okay, just a couple other quick commands that are useful. If you want to update conda, you can do conda update conda. We won't do that here, but that updates conda. If you want to update a package, you do conda update and then the package name. Again, we don't really need to do that in this case. Those are probably the main ones. When you're done like working in an environment on the command line, you should probably deactivate it. So to do that, you just do conda deactivate, and that will take you back to the base. And you can see it change there. Okay, so we basically set up that environment. I'm going to close that out. So if we go into this environment now, it should list all those modules or libraries that we've installed into it. So you can see that list here. Yeah, so there's that new environment. If we go back to home and that's listed, you can see that none of these programs have been installed. You have to do that on an environment by environment basis. So if we want to use Jupyter Notebooks in this environment, we'll have to install it, or the lab, or Spider, or whatnot. And then once you do that, you can launch it and then start working in that environment. Okay, so that's the basics of setting up a Anaconda distribution on your machine and then setting up an environment in which to do your data science. So if you're going to work through this course or any other like Python data science course, this is generally your first step. And again, one of the nice things about this is it creates these like little sandboxes on your computer where you can run Python and its libraries without maybe screwing up your system if something gets messed up. So it's a nice little restricted area that you can work in within your system.